Hello, more tip time. Continuation on defense. Things to think about for defense alone. Let's say, your style or your pattern. You're always looking for an escape or an engage. Right now, try and focus on escaping. So, best way to do this is like if you're practicing with someone else, you go through like a defensive pattern. Okay, you're either you're static, you're reactive, or you're active. You're trying to at least escape, get out. Not just sit there and eventually take like instead of 2 or 3 hits, to where it turns into six, so then you're just getting picked apart. You're literally trying to look for an out. So, by time they hit you once and you defend, hit you twice, defend by the third one, you should be like out. Okay, so you're looking for a way out. It don't matter which version you use. You're using it to not just stay there and then, rely on your defense too much for them to find the holes. Okay, so be mindful with your defense. Just don't be like, oh, I can defend everything. You can't get me. I'm just gonna stand here and just shut everything down. It's not how it works in real life. Okay, there's moments where you can see it, but that's not how you want to utilize it. You literally want to utilize it. 1, 2, exit. One exit. 1, 2, 3 exit. You're looking for a way to disengage, especially if they're the aggressor and you're forced to go full defense. There's other ways you want to think about it, but for now, you're mainly just looking for a way out and escape. So, when you're adding it in, your base, your starters, your finishers, whatever you're trying to do, if you're like do your combination, and you go 1-2 or 2-1, at the end they're gonna throw back at you, right? Sorry, I'm getting over being sick. Technically still sick, but if you start with your 1-2 and then they go, oh, it's my turn, they come at you, and then you go defensive. Okay, or maybe you go one and you're offensive, defensive at the same time, but they come through and they connect, and then it forces you to go defensive, and then they throw at you again, and then you throw like a second defense, and then they throw at you a third time. You're trying to find a way out. A lot of this deals with footwork, and then I'll get into some other things too. Now, when you're looking at defense as far as applying it to starters, base, and finishers, in the last video I was talking about how you kind of want to, find your combination. Then once you find your combination, try and add offense, defense to each one of your strikes, okay, in your combination. What you want to do in the in-betweens, okay? So I have my starter, and what I'll do is have either someone feed me, or even on a heavy bag, or just shadow boxing. What you want to do is try and kind of pull these things out. You want to kind of start thinking about filling space and filling downtime. This is where like taking all the turns starts to come in. If not, it's at least having an answer for them when it's their turn, other than just, okay, so you throw your starter. Then right after your starter, you want to start calling in on, okay, if I throw 1-2, I'm going to go full static, and then I throw my base, boo boo, okay? So then I throw, starter 1-2, full static, and then I throw my base 1-2. Now I'm going to go full reactive, okay? And then I come out of reactive, and then I throw my finisher, and then I'm going to go full active, okay? And then I'm going to rinse and repeat. And then I'll come back from my active, and I'll go 1-2, then static, 1-2, reactive, 1-2, active, okay? You want to fill the gaps in between your starter, your base, and your finishers. So try and shift between and fill those gaps in between. Because let's say if you're throwing your starter, your base, or your finisher, you throw your starter. Excuse me. If you throw your starter and they shut it down, okay, they're going to come back at you. So if you didn't connect with your starter, that's going to lead you to your base and then like to your finisher. You know, you're building a pattern for failure. Okay, you're not just going, ah, fuck. Okay, I tried my starter, it didn't work, so you know, it gives you something to go directly to. You shouldn't just always throw a combination and just be like, okay, cool. Okay, it's instantly throwing your starter, 1, 2, poof, you know, throw my starter, poof, 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 throw my starter, poof, poof, poof. Okay, you're trying to keep yourself, if you're not offensive, you're defensive. You know, it's same thing. You could do it like on mitts, pads. You know, you throw a 1, 2, and then what's coach do? Okay, puts the mitts out, and then you put your hands on it. Okay, that's your reactive. Okay, if not, you may throw out one hand out on the mitt. Okay, if not, he may come in and he may go guard on guard with you. So then there's your static. So it's training your body to go from offensive to defensive. And then in training in the in-betweens, you're going to have, you know, your defense to where you're throwing 1, you know, and then 2, and then going static. So you're always coming in and out. You're always defensive, offense all the time. And if something doesn't connect, you can go straight to your defense. You know, you want to start relying on your defense just as much as you do your offense. And you need to use it to fill those gaps. And then when I get into engaging and disengaging, you know, just remember, you're trying to look for inside those gaps. From what I first was talking about was you're looking for an out. That way you can reset. You don't want to ball up and go purely, okay, and then just have them hit you 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. It's not productive, okay. And it's what we call target practice, and it you know, we've all seen it. But anyways, moving on. Then you need to think a little bit differently, like static, reactive, active. Okay, it's not just, you know, up, up. You need to animate it more. You need to be more forceful with it. You need to come more forward with it. You need to close the gaps with it. Close the space. You know, if you're static, you need to not just be here and then taking everything on here. You need to be kind of working your way forward with it. Okay, it's not just static and then completely static. You need to learn how to use it to advance or to disengage. Okay, to engage and disengage. And then as you're working that, you find places where you can create your exits. If you're just static and you can't create an opportunity where you can angle out, you're going to run into speed bumps to where you're kind of stuck in that 50-50 or something like that. So it'll give you options to start creating those exits by being more proactive and active with your defense than just standing there. But always looking for escapes with your defense. You know, at least by the time the second or third time they hit you, you're out and on an angle, and you're already starting on your starter with them from a different angle. Just one way, another way to think about some of the defense stuff. Let's see, what else can we talk about on defense? You know, work on your reaction time in between, you know, in the spaces where you're going static, you know, when you're going reactive and when you're going active. These are things you want to look at, and you want to try and take away the downtime. Like a good drill to do too, you know, to figure out stuff. Like, let's say boxers and kickboxers, okay, they're very static, right? So if they're both very static, what you almost want to think about is you're trying to go guard on guard, okay? So if I have a high guard and he has a high guard. I'm trying to put my high guard right on his high guard. I'm trying to close that space. Just little things to think about. You know, and then if you're active, you know, that's a good way to close space too. If you're mixing your active, okay, with static, that can cause you to drop right in, and you're trying to put this right in their face. There's many different ways that you can do this. It's just that's more for engaging and disengaging, but it's just to start thinking that way for future videos. And then what your defense can do other than just defend, okay? And there's also looking at other people's way they defend, like looking for opportunities. So getting into defense, you can play with guard, and eventually you can play with base. A good way I start off is playing with guard. Once you're able to manipulate guard, you can start playing with base. You know, for off balancing, all sorts of different stuff. You can do it the opposite way too. It's just the way I see it. So before I get into those kind of videos, it just gives you an idea. You know, like this, you're looking, you know, static, you're looking guard on guard. Especially for like boxing and stuff like that. You're trying to get inside, take away all that space. Allows you to clinch, do all sorts of different stuff. Especially if they're Muay Thai, you try and get guard on guard. You're inside, and you're probably in an area that they're not used to you being in. And then you're already static, so you don't have to worry about too much elbows as long as you know good elbow defense and patterns. Where I'm headed with this. So, things to think about too, okay, for static, if you're static, is if you're very high, okay, you notice how my elbows are up, they can manipulate you, okay. By playing with guard isn't always like framing on them or like coming through and scooping, okay, or pulling guard down, okay. A lot of things you can do is you can literally throw hooks to their guard, okay. You can uppercut their static guard, okay. So that's things to think about there, okay, especially you when you're working on your guard. You know, if you got high guard or your elbow's way out here, okay, are you easily manipulated because of it? And then same thing when you're thinking about reactive. Okay, you might be out here, it's kind of like 50-50. You're susceptible to being swiped, pulled, and pushed. So that's another example of playing guard. Okay, same with active. Okay, you're susceptible to a lot of things on that as well. And you got to start looking at all the different things that they can do to you for going through these kinds of guards. And then, you know, the goods and bads of what you're going to see. And that's a whole nother video later, but take these things into account. And especially as you're trying to train them, and if you're like partnering up with people and you're starting, you know, and you're going through and doing, both of you are doing reactive, you know, glove on gloves. You see it all the time in training, is to start playing with these things. You know, how can I set up my kicks? Okay. That gets into footwork, head movement, stuff like that. But those are some of the kind of things you need to think about in these different styles of guards. And then the patterns you'll find on your own. I'm not going to give you my patterns because that's giving you my playbook. But you'll stumble across them. And then the same thing I was saying about in earlier videos, you know, your base. You'll find there's only a handful of bases that work. There's also only a handful of like patterns that kind of flow and work. And if you think that way, you'll start finding ones that fit and flow. And there's a process to get there. And you got to figure that out kind of on your own. And, you know, trial and error. And then, of course, you're going to have your own way, you know. And then also just IQ, if not IQ, just the way that you think, or, certain opponents, may work here, may not work there, may not work for him, might work for him. Not everything works for everyone. Um, but just some things to think about with defense. I'll probably do another video on this, but I'm trying to keep this one short because I'm sick as crap. Yeah, I think I got everything out that I wanted to get out for this one, and then I have more to give you here later. Anyways, thank you guys, and have a good weekend.